Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's Why Voyager's Ending Was Lackluster. So in this video I won't just be talking about the series finale Endgame, Lord knows I talked about that a lot already. But I'm actually going to be covering the final 3 seasons of Voyager, seasons 5, 6, and 7. And why I think they were kind of just mediocre to poor. They were kind of lackluster, didn't live up to the rest of the series, and that seasons 1, 2, and 4 were far superior to the final 3 seasons. Now, season 3 is another story which I will cover in another video that will be coming out next. But this is going to focus more on the final 3 seasons of Voyager. And why I think it's lackluster. So the first thing I have to talk about is I believe they're lackluster because I know a lot of people don't feel that way. There's quite a few people I've heard out there that have the opinion that the show improved in its final 4 seasons. And while I agree with the season 4 part, not the rest of it. And you know, that's fine. Everyone is entitled to their opinions, even if they're wrong. I'm just kidding, but they are. But anyway, everyone's entitled to their opinions, and so if other people see it that way, that's fine. But that's not how I see it, and I'm not alone. I know quite a few people. I've seen people online. There's people I know personally, like my sister, who feels maybe even stronger about this than I do. Because if I recall correctly, she said that she didn't like season 6 or 7 at all. And said they were hard to get through. Which, for me, to be clear, like there are still good episodes that I really like. Like every once in a while, hit it out of the park. In season 5, 6, and 7, so I don't think any of the seasons are terrible. Out of the 3, I think season 7 is the worst. I do think it progressively got worse. Like season 5, I think was mostly just bland and mediocre. Season 6 felt more a hit or miss, like it was either a terrible episode or a great episode. I mean, there's some mediocre ones too, but it seemed to go back and zigzag back and forth with quality. Where season 7, I was at one point unsure on if I disliked season 7 or season 3 more. I couldn't figure out which season I thought was the worst season of Voyager. But after I rewatched the show, and I think I'm sticking with this, I decided season 3 was the clear loser, worst season. But as I said, I'll cover that in another video. But next to season 3, season 7. And the thing I think about season 7 is, especially the first half was okay. There were some terrible episodes in that first half, but there were some good ones. And so this first half of season 7 was, yeah, somewhat strong. I don't know, strong is too strong of a word. It was not terrible. It had some good stuff in it. But the second half of season 7 was, in fact, terrible. Leading up to this horrendous ending. So I'll start with that premise, even though I know not everyone agrees with that premise of that the final 3 seasons lacked something. So if you've been following my channel as I've been going through the first 2 seasons of Voyager, I just finished covering the episodes of season 2, you'll notice me constantly pointing out why I like these seasons better than the later seasons. I often use examples of a sense of community, a sense of family, a sense of continuity, a more sense of character, and a sort of driving force of continuity. Even though they're not great in continuity, I think they were better than the later seasons. And I often complain about the later seasons that it was just a different forehead alien attacking the ship every week. Now, I mentioned this on my channel before, but I got that saying originally from this website that used to make reviews on Star Trek Voyager when it came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was a written website called the Cynics Corner, which they did late Deep Space Nine too in Enterprise. But I remember the Voyager reviews is that every episode it says, oh, and these four-headed aliens attack Voyager. Practically every episode. And when I go through those final 3 seasons, I'm going to keep track of how many times four-headed aliens attack Voyager. So that became a running thing. But the point is, and the reason why I bring this up, is because I believe that it's less focused on the character stories, less focused on doing original things with Star Trek, and always falling back to let's have aliens attack the ship to make it exciting. Like they would just fall back to that every single time. And the episodes that bled a certain mediocrity to the episodes, where the episodes kind of just bled together and sort of left the characters. Now, as I said, I'm going to talk more about Season 2 and Season 3 in my other video, and I'm going to talk more about Michael Piller and why he left the show. But the one thing I will say here is that Michael Piller had this... He was all about characters, and he was really pushing the writers hard to focus on the characters, and always said, what is this about? What is this story about? And so with his departure, I think they lost something. I think they lost that. Now, Jeri Taylor was also a really good showrunner. She worked with Piller for years. And I think she was kind of... Both Piller and Taylor created the show with Rick Berman. And I think both of them were good at standing up to Rick Berman when he was trying to be too controlling. And Rick Berman would respected them enough to sort of let them do that. At least that is just the sense I get. I'm basing this off of what I read. I don't know this for a fact. This is just my guess. But so Jeri Taylor left the show at the end of season 4. And if you notice, the 3 seasons I say are lackluster are 5, 6, and 7. So after she left the show. So I think Taylor and Piller were keeping the show, the heart of the show, the emotions, that sense of family, that driving, and also, fighting against Berman. And I think that when Jeri Taylor left, Brannon Braga took over as showrunner for seasons 5 and 6, and Kenneth Biller took over as the showrunner in season 7. I think both of those, they were kind of young at the time, and they've never been showrunners before. So I think that Rick Berman was steamrolling over them and intimidating them and getting them to do whatever he wanted them to do. This is backed up by what writer Bryan Fuller said. So Bryan Fuller came on the show in season 4 of Voyager. He started out by writing a couple of scripts for Deep Space Nine. He said he loved the Deep Space Nine writing staff. They were great to work with, great people. And he wanted to work for Deep Space Nine. But he didn't get the job there. He got the job on Voyager, which he was happy, to have a job. So he took it. But he felt that the Voyager writing staff was more snobbish, I believe is the term he used, more reserved. He did say that he learned a lot from Brannon Braga and Joe Manowski, especially Joe Manowski. So he did say did have praises for them, but he did say it wasn't as conducive of an atmosphere. And then he also had issues with Brannon Braga when he took over for showrunner. He referred to Brannon Braga as a mini Rick Berman, sort of going along with my theory that Rick Berman was just steamrolling over Braga, and that Braga would just do whatever Berman wanted him to do, and that really frustrated Bryan Fuller. And then in season 7, Bryan Fuller disliked Kenneth Biller even more. He referred to Kenneth Biller as a corporate stooge. So even worse than Brannon Braga, and he felt that he was just doing whatever the studio and the producers wanted him to do. And he just described him as being a thorn in the side of Kenneth Biller, constantly arguing with him, constantly nitpicking, constantly just having sarcastic and mean-spirited things to say, and not really being nice. And he guesses that's why he left. That's why he wasn't invited over on Enterprise. So to me, that goes a long way of explaining the answer the question of the video of why was Voyager's ending so lackluster. I think a lot of it had to do with the departure of Michael Piller and Jeri Taylor, and replaced by essentially yes men who did whatever Rick Berman said. Now, again, if you're familiar with my channel, you might know that I constantly have bad things to say about Rick Berman, and that there are some good things he did. Like, I do praise him for certain things. Like, he was helpful in the early years of TNG, particularly getting Michael Piller on board and having his back. He was actually kind of good at holding back some of Ira Steven Bear's more ridiculous instincts over on Deep Space Nine, like wanting to end the show with the reveal that it was all in Benny Russell's head, which was the dumbest fucking idea I've ever heard, and thank God Rick Berman was there to hold him back from doing that. But for the most part, Rick Berman likes to play it super safe. He likes to please the studio, and sometimes he makes really, really, really dumb decisions. And first of all, he has no creative bone in his body. When he tries to take a more creative role, it never works out very well, a la that final episode of Voyager, which is a complete failure. So that's why I feel like it was important to have someone like Michael Piller and Jeri Taylor, whom he really respected and whom would stand up to him and fight him on certain things that needed to be fought. And Bryan Fuller was talking a bit about that's part of the reason why he was so adversarial to Kenneth Biller, because he thought that Kenneth Biller was just doing whatever Berman in the studio wanted to. He thought that someone needed to sort of stand up, but of course most of the time he was just overruled. And so the way he described it, I believe, or the way so Ronald D. Moore tried to join the Voyager writing staff in season 6 of Voyager after Deep Space Nine finished, but he didn't last very long. He only lasted a couple of episodes because, first of all, he said he was used to being like the senior writer in his partnership with Brannon Braga, and it was hard for him to adjust to him working under Brannon Braga. And also he thought that Brannon Braga was too close-minded and wouldn't accept taking risks. The way he described it was that Brannon Braga was still good at the weird sci-fi shit, which was what he was always good at. He was still good at doing those sort of intrigue Star Trek episodes, but that character development and challenging the characters is something that he refused to do. And that's something that was lacking in the show, and that Ronald D. Moore, whenever he tried to push for it, he got met with a brick wall because Brannon Braga and Rick Berman did not want to take any risks. The way he specifically said is that they played it safe, which is also what Bryan Fuller said about Braga and Kenneth Biller, especially Kenneth Biller, that they played it safe. And that is exactly why those last 3 seasons were lackluster. Because they played it safe. They didn't take any risks. They didn't challenge the characters. They didn't push the story forward in any directions. There was no real character development. The characters were stagnant. For that matter, most of the characters on the show became kind of background characters or cardboard characters. Many of the actors complained about this, especially Robert Beltran, who was more and more frustrated with the show and ended up getting a little bit of an adversarial relationship with the writers himself because he was so unhappy with the writing in those final seasons that he started doing it like a poor acting job. And because he was doing a poor acting job, the writers got irritated with him and stopped writing the main parts for him in large episodes, and it became a circle where he got more pissed off with them. Now, a lot of people like to point to Robert Beltran being an asshole. I think he was kind of frank. I'm not very fond of his modern day politics, so maybe I'm somewhat inclined to agree with the asshole part, but in this fight, I think he was correct. I think he was right to question the writing. I think he was right that the writing was getting stagnant and losing it, and I think he was right to be irritated by it. And he was right to get pissed off when they wouldn't really write for his character. Same with Garrett Wang, who kept going to the writers saying, please promote my character, and Brannon Braga saying, well, somebody has to be the ensign, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It makes absolutely no sense why he wouldn't be promoted. And, they started underwriting him. They underwrote Tuvok. They underwrote Neelix. Like, Tom and B'Elanna were just like this couple, the married couple they go to. That's their only purpose now. And, or to Tom to talk about the 20th century all the time. But yeah, they pretty much underwrote everyone except for Janeway, who was the supporting character now, and the two main leads of the show now, the Doctor and 7 of 9. This, of course, was much worse than Season 7. Season 7 was officially the Doctor and 7 of 9 show. They might as well changed the name of Star Trek Voyager to the Doctor and 7 of 9 show. I think my sister even came up with a nice little jingle for it. The Doctor and 7 of 9 show. With their sidekick supporting character, Captain Janeway. Captain Janeway, the supporter of the Doctor and 7 of 9 show, and a bunch of background extras who hardly do anything. But to be fair, like, Tom and B'Elanna had a couple episodes in Season 7, so did Harry Kim. I don't think Tuvok had. Oh, he had that one stupid Maquis episode that sucked. That wasn't really a Tuvok episode. Maybe there's another one I'm forgetting. And Chakotay had a couple episodes when they were trying to put him with 7 of 9, which was a terrible, terrible, terrible thing to do. So yeah, they just stalled on the character development. Here's the thing, and this is what I'm noticing going through the first 2 seasons of Voyager. There were strong character development, and I think a lot of that was Michael Piller. There were character arcs. I liked how the characters were shaping up and working. Season 3, I'll get to Season 3. Season 4, renewed with the introduction of 7 of 9, and I think it had this boost to the writing, and all of the characters came off stronger in Season 4. But with the writing of Season 4, I think a lot of that had to do with they had the best. They had like the dream team. They still had Lisa Klink. They just got Brian Fuller. They had Joe Manowski, which I'm iffy on, but he apparently did a good job. He was a good foil for Brannon Braga, and they still had Jeri Taylor involved. And I think that dream team is what really worked. Season 5 lost Lisa Klink and a few others, I believe, and yeah, Brannon Braga. They lost Jeri Taylor, which is the main thing. But anyway, so Season 4 was easily the best season of the show. It had amazing character development. But then when they got to season 5, Braga took over. They lost some good writers. And they just didn't know what to do with the characters. They didn't know what to do with the characters. And they kept trying to reinvent them. This is a common theme of season 5 that I'm going to get into as I go through the episodes of season 5. They tried to rewrite Janeway's character to make her all depressed and wanting to kill herself. Well, not kill herself, but like lock herself in the room because she's depressed that she left the Voyager in the Delta Quadrant. They turned B'Elanna Torres actually suicidal. They tried to make Tom Paris all of a sudden love the ocean out of nowhere and willing to sacrifice his career to do that and disobey orders. They made Harry Kim this horny teenager all of a sudden, which was totally not what he was. And, well, I did like what they did with Tuvok in the episode Gravity, so that was the one good thing. And, of course, Neelix was now just a lovable goofball and didn't have that conniving, sort of intelligent, sneaky sort of side that he had in the first 2 seasons. He's just a dumb, goofy guy now. And so they, so they were basically, and Chakotay loves boxing all of a sudden. So they were just rewriting the character, and I do get the feel from watching season 5 that they did not know what to do with the characters. And when we moved to season 6, they just gave up on them entirely. Like, season 5 showed that they didn't know what to do with them, and season 6 and 7, especially 7, they're like, why bother? Let's just have them be background characters, say yes sir, and oh, there's an anomaly sir, and here's buttons to push, boop boop bop bop. Let's just focus on the Doctor in 7 of 9 for the rest of the show. Maybe we'll do a storyline with Chakotay hanging out and eating dinner with Janeway every once in a while or whatever. But for the most part, let's not even bother trying to write for them. And so that's why I could not disagree more with the people who say that the later seasons were better than the earlier seasons of Voyager. It must be, the conclusion I come to is they must be looking for something totally different in the TV show than what I'm looking for. They must be looking for cool ships, weird technology, or science shenanigans, or perhaps they like four-head aliens attacking the ship every week. Not putting anyone down if they do prefer that. I just don't. For me, what I look for in a good story is strong characters, first of all. And I think even like with 7 of 9, I think her character lost something in later seasons as well. I think season 4 was easily the strongest season for her. And in later seasons, especially season 7, her character journey kind of stagnated and wasn't nearly as interesting. I think it was still good in season 5, to be fair. So season 4 and 5. But I think 6 is when they started kind of losing it, and 7's when they completely lost it, and she was now boring as well, even though the entire show revolved around her at this stage. It still made her a less interesting character, and they turned the Doctor into an egotistical prick who had no regard for his fellow crew members in season 7, and who was apparently this Mary Sue who could accomplish anything, which in my opinion ruined his character, even though he's now also the main character of the show. So they just lost the handle on the characters, and that's what I look for. I look for strong character development, great character stories, good commentary, interesting moral dilemmas. And that's not to say that seasons 5, 6, and 7 never delivered on this. Some of my best favorite episodes are in those seasons, such as Drone, which I love. One, if not the best, then maybe the second best episode. No, third best episode of Voyager. Maybe the second best episode of Voyager. Amazing, heartfelt, good character stories. So it's not to say they never had good character stories. And season 6 had Blink of an Eye, but that's more of weird science shit. I mean, there's some emotional heart to it, but through the guest characters, not so much the main characters. but the Memorial had that, social commentary that I love in Star Trek. So did the Critical Care episode of season 7, also strong political commentary sort of thing that I like. Workforce parts 1 and 2 in Voyager, also great character stories. Great character story for Janeway. Counterpoint in season 5 was another amazing character story for Janeway, which I believe was Michael Taylor who wrote that episode. Michael Taylor is another good writer. So there were still some good writers on board who understood characters. But those creativity was stifled by Berman and his yes men, who would just love to play it safe. They couldn't take risks the way that Deep Space Nine took risks, which is why Deep Space Nine is far superior to Voyager. Even the writers, I think not just Brian Fuller, but also Lisa Klink also preferred working on Deep Space Nine. So these guest writers would have rather worked on Deep Space Nine, because apparently even the atmosphere in the writers' room was much better and more creative. And they were able to take risks. There were many examples throughout these later seasons of Berman shooting down ideas that would have made the show much better. The biggest example of this is Brannon Braga, to his credit, wanted season 4 to be the year of hell, wanted the whole season to be continuous serialized storyline about Voyager getting its ass kicked and all of the growth that would come from it, and it would not end in a reset. They would be stuck with all the damage, and guess who said no to that? Mr. Rick Berman said absolutely not, no way, not doing it. And that's when Jeri Taylor was still there. I don't know if Jeri Taylor was on board with that idea. Maybe she wasn't, so maybe that's why. But I don't know. That's so... no, he shot down the Year of Hell idea, and then in later seasons, like when Ronald D. Moore came on board, he had all these interesting character stories to challenge the characters and stuff that he thought would be great. And he said that he took most of the ideas with him to Battlestar Galactica and did a lot of those ideas there. And to be fair, some of these ideas Ronald D. Moore had, I think, were too retconning. That's my one complaint about him, even though I think he's a much better writer than Brannon Braga. But that's my one complaint about him, is that he retcons things too willy-nilly. And I think some of what he was proposing was too big of a retcon for the Voyager characters, but not everything. And the main thing is that he wanted to write character stories first and foremost. He wanted to challenge the characters, and of course, Rick Berman said no through his Brannon Braga proxy. And another big example is in season 5, the episode "Someone to Watch Over Me." Berman refused to put the Doctor and Seven of Nine as a couple, which is what the episode called for. They originally wrote it with the scene of the Doctor expressing his feelings to Seven of Nine, her responding sort of somewhat confused, but sort of positively, and that would have made the show so much better. But Rick Berman said, no, you can't do that. And so that scene was changed to a holodeck scene where it wasn't the real Seven of Nine. It was just a holographic version of her. And he refused to tell the real Seven of Nine. Instead, eventually, so they kept them apart and eventually did this bullshit with Seven of Nine Chakotay, because that's what the producers decreed was the thing to do, even though they had zero chemistry. Where the Doctor and Seven of Nine had a lot of chemistry, especially in that episode. That episode really sold them as a couple, and the audience picked up on this. They ran with this. There was a huge devoted shipper fan base. Please put the Doctor and 7 and 9 together. It was because of their writing. It's because they were so good. And I talked about this before in many other videos. This was the difference between Deep Space Nine and Voyager. Deep Space Nine would see two characters who had natural chemistry together, and they would build on that chemistry. They would look, they would watch the show and they'd be like, look, these characters has chemistry. Let's build on it. Let's do more with it. That's how Worf and Dax came about. That's how Odo and Kira came about. That's how Ezra and Bashir came about. Like they would see the chemistry that already exists and latch onto it. Whereas Voyager would ignore any chemistry that already existed, like Harry Kim and B'Elanna Torres, or Janeway and Chakotay, or the Doctor and 7 of 9. They would just, that's not what we want to do. We don't care if the chemistry is already there. We want to just decree that Tom and B'Elanna should be together, even though they barely had any scenes together and don't hardly have any chemistry. Let's smash them together. They decree that Chakotay and 7 of 9 should be together when they have zero chemistry. That was the main difference between Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and a lot of it had to do with Rick Berman, because even though he did hold back some of Ira Steven Behr's more ridiculous instincts, for the most part, and especially after season 5, he just let Ira Steven Behr do whatever the hell he wanted with Deep Space Nine, where Voyager was the main show. That was considered, the mainstay show of Star Trek at the time. Deep Space Nine was just a supplement. So Rick Berman had his claws synced into Voyager, which is why it's not as good, quite frankly, and especially since after Piller and Taylor left, there was no one there to really fight him, to be the counterbalance to him, and they're just replaced by, in Brian Fuller's words, a mini Rick Berman and a corporate stooge. And voila, that's what you get. Yeah, you get 3 seasons that still had good writers, like Brannon Braga, Joe Manaski. I got issues with Joe Manaski, but still. Michael Taylor joined in season 5, I believe. He went on to do Enterprise, be one of the better writers on that show as well. Was Mike Sussman on later seasons of Voyager? Or no, I don't think so. I think he didn't join until Enterprise. But Brian Fuller, of course, he became a showrunner, and he even came up with the concept of Discovery, but that's another story entirely. So, yeah, you had good writers on there still. So every once in a while they would churn out a good episode, but was really despite the leadership instead of because of it. Really. And Berman was just determined to play it safe, and this is why I think those last seasons were lackluster. Playing it safe is not that interesting. Deep Space Nine didn't play it safe. In fact, they were constantly butting heads with the producers in the studio who wanted them to play it safe. I would argue not even Next Generation played it safe. That they always, especially when Piller came in, they always did a lot of risque things. And also, the main mentality that they missed, that they were lacking from either Michael Piller or one of his accolades, I could say, one of the people who worked very closely with him, which is Ira Steven Behr and Jeri Taylor. They were taught by Piller, and they had that strong sense of characters. What are these characters? What is this episode about? What does it do for the characters? That was completely lost. Not completely, as I said. A couple of stray episodes here and there in the last 3 seasons that did that. But for the most, generally speaking, it was lost. It was lost. And it all led up to the worst series finale, in my opinion. One that did not respect the fans. One that shit on all the characters. One that was written... So, Endgame was written by Rick Berman, most of all, who teamed up with Kenneth Biller, corporate stooge, and Brannon Braga, mini Rick Berman, and the 3 of them wrote Endgame. Now, Brannon Braga, as I said, is a good writer. Even though he was a terrible showrunner, he was a good writer occasionally. He lacked the character story. That's why he was better when he was paired with someone who was better at characters like Joe Manaski or Ronald D. Moore. But being paired with Kenneth Biller and Rick Berman, no one's there to write good character stories. They're both bad writers. Kenneth Biller, as I said, he can do some good stuff once in a while, but he was too much of a play it safe guy and that interfered. And so you had that and someone with no creative bone in his body, and you got like a corporate layout to what a finale of Star Trek should be. Not something that has any creativity or respects the show that came before, which is what any good series finale should do, and one that doesn't give a shit about what the show has established. And so you have a disaster. So, to get into more detail, specifically about the finale, I'm going to go ahead and do another pitch meeting. Now, I've done this a couple times already. This is based off of the pitch meetings done on YouTube by Ryan George. If you have not checked out his pitch meeting channel, I highly recommend. He does movies, and it's an homage where I do the same sort of format that he does, and it's just a humble, nowhere near as good as his quality and comedic timing, definitely not as good. And it's just my humble rendering of my version of Endgame, doing a pitch meeting for Endgame, because I have to point out all of the terrible flaws of Endgame. So yeah, so definitely it's just a homage to his work, and definitely check it out. It's far superior than mine. Anyway, enjoy the pitch meeting to Endgame. So, you have a Voyager series finale for me? Yes, sir, I do. It's called Endgame. Oh, like that Babylon 5 episode that ended their war story arc? Babylon what now? Never mind. So what happens in this thing? So we start the episode with the news report of Voyager returning to Earth. So we're just gonna start the episode with the event we've been building towards and teasing for 7 years, just casually being reported on the news? Well, it turns out that this is 26 years in the future, and we're going to pan over to see a much older version of Janeway watching a news report that's celebrating the 10th anniversary of Voyager returning home. Oh, so we're going to do a Star Trek finale that shows our characters 25 years in the future. We already did this for the Next Generation finale, All Good Things. Exactly, and that was really popular, so we're going to do that again. Wouldn't it be better to do something more original and unique to Voyager? No. Well, okay then. So then we're going to see all the characters in the future. B'Elanna and Tom are retired and still married, and their daughter is in Starfleet, and the Doctor is still around and he's getting married to a random hot chick. So anyway, we also see Harry Kim, and he's a captain now. Somehow I expected he'd still be an ensign. And we also see Tuvok, and he has a debilitating disease that's going to kill him and made him mentally disabled. And it turns out that the disease could have been cured if they had made it back to the Alpha Quadrant sooner. But that doesn't make any sense, because the Doctor has been able to cure absolutely every disease, including strange ones from the other side of the galaxy. He even brought Neelix back to life once, and you're telling me he couldn't cure a well-known Vulcan disease that's been in the Federation database for centuries? That's what we're going with. Well, okay then. We're also going to see Reginald Barclay. Hey, he's from that other show. That's right, sir, but he guest starred on the show twice, so we're going to have him act like a main character now and be an honorable member of the Voyager crew, and he's going to become good friends with Janeway. Seems like the Voyager finale should be focused more on Voyager characters, not Next Generation characters that appeared on the show a couple of times. Well, the thing about that is people like Barclay, so anyway, we then see Janeway visit Chakotay's grave. Oh no! Yeah, it turns out he died of sadness or something, because the love of his life, 7 of 9, died before they made it back to the Alpha Quadrant, and he was never the same after that. So we're making 7 of 9 the love of Chakotay's life? Where did that come from? From the script that I wrote. So Robert Beltran has been bothering us since he never gets any screen time anymore, so I figured since we give all the screen time to 7 of 9, if we make them a couple, he will get more screen time that way. But the two barely interacted with each other, and they seemed to have no romantic chemistry whatsoever when they did. Wouldn't it make more sense to put 7 of 9 with Harry Kim, like we were teasing at the start of season 4, or put her with the Doctor, who we've explored had a crush on her, and many of the fans have expressed that they would love the idea of 7 of 9 and the Doctor being a couple. Well, you see, sir, I don't care what the fans think, or what would work well for the characters, or what would make sense for what we established in the story. I just want Robert Beltran to leave me alone. So I figured if I had it so he could make out with the hottest character on the show, he'd finally shut up. Ah, smart. So anyway, Admiral Janeway is going to plot to travel back in time to what is the present day that the show is set in now. Hey, that's where the show is set now. That's what I said, yes. So anyway, she wants to travel back in time to change the future so that Voyager gets home 16 years earlier, so that 7 of 9 doesn't die, and that means Chakotay doesn't have to die of a broken heart, and so that Tuvok gets home in time to cure his disease before it becomes a problem, and so that 22 other people don't die as well. So she wants to travel back in time to save 23 people, yet I'm sure many more people than that died in the 7 years since the show started, at least 40. So it seems like 23 people in 16 years is a very low count compared to how many people they already lost. Doesn't she care about all the people who already died? Ah, but you see, none of those people are main characters, so no, she doesn't care. But why doesn't she just travel back to when Voyager first left the Alpha Quadrant and prevent them from getting flung into the Delta Quadrant in the first place? Well, sir, if she did that, then Voyager wouldn't have saved the Ocampans from the Kazon, or rescued 7 of 9 from the Borg, or the many other things they did that impacted the Delta Quadrant in a positive way. Then why is she erasing the last 16 years? It seems like if they had such a positive impact in 7 years, they would have an even greater impact in the Delta Quadrant in 16 years. Well, you see, those 16 years occurred off screen, so the audience doesn't care about them. But if we erase the 7 years that the show has been going on for, the audience would be like, hey, I've watched all that stuff, you can't erase it from the timeline. But it's okay to undo all the help they gave to the Delta Quadrant because it happened off screen? Yes. Well, okay then. Oh, thank God. So anyway, in order to get the time travel device, she needs to get it from a Klingon scientist named Korath. So anyway, Korath is going to refuse to give Admiral Janeway the time travel device and ask for more money that she doesn't have. Oh no! So Janeway's going to steal it by force. Then we're going to have a big old chase with the Klingon ships, but Admiral Janeway is going to get away and travel back to the past. It seems like this whole sequence is unnecessary, and we could have just had Janeway get the time travel device and go straight to the past. I don't see the point of including the Klingon chase scene. Well, the point is we need to have more action in the episode, plus Klingons are a fan favorite, so I'm going to include them to get the audience to go, hey, those are Klingons, I know who the Klingons are. Right, fan service is more important than good writing, I guess. It is. So Admiral Janeway arrives in the past and meets with modern day Janeway, and we're gonna have two Janeways meet and argue with each other. Didn't we already do this in the episode Deadlock that aired in the 2nd season? I don't know what you're talking about. My memory only extends to the last 3 episodes we made. So anyway, Admiral Janeway is going to tell Captain Janeway of her plan to get Voyager home by using a Borg transwarp hub. That means that the main villain of this episode is going to be the Borg, and more specifically, the Borg Queen. Isn't the Borg more of a next generation villain? After all, that's what they're best known for. And for that matter, the Borg Queen was a villain known for the movie First Contact. Shouldn't we focus more on things that are more unique to Voyager for the finale? Well, you see, none of the Voyager villains were ever that popular, so we have to use Next Generation villains instead? That's right, sir. For an episode that's meant to wrap up Voyager, we seem to be focusing on a lot of things from the Next Generation. Well, sir, the thing is, TNG was a more popular show than Voyager, so if we trick people into thinking we're TNG, they might watch this show. Smart. So as I was saying, Admiral Janeway will give them advanced technology that can defeat the Borg. Isn't she severely altering the past by giving Starfleet advanced technology 23 years before they're supposed to get it? That could have devastating effects on the timeline. Yeah. Probably, but the thing is, she doesn't care. Well, why not? Because I don't care and I wrote her. That works. Anyway, they're going to use this advanced technology to try to get to the transwarp hub so they can get home. And what is a transwarp hub? So the transwarp hub is going to be a space station with tons of portals that let the Borg instantly travel to anywhere in the galaxy, and there's even a portal that takes them directly to Earth. Wait, if they can instantly go anywhere in the galaxy, why haven't they assimilated the whole galaxy by now? I don't know. Maybe they're underachievers. And if there's a portal that can take them instantly to Earth, why have they only sent one ship going very slowly from the other side of the galaxy at a time to Earth? In the past, we stated that assimilating Earth is one of the Borg's main goals. If they have a portal that can take them instantly to Earth, why didn't they send a fleet to Earth where they could have assimilated Earth within seconds and the entire Alpha Quadrant within days? Listen, sir, I'm gonna need you to get all the way off my back about the transwarp hub. We need it for the plot so Voyager can get home and have to fight the Borg to do it. Well, let me get off that thing. So Admiral Janeway is going to go to the transwarp hub to sabotage it, and she's going to get captured by the Borg Queen. Oh no, it's going to be hard to get Voyager home now that the Borg Queen has captured Admiral Janeway. Actually, it's going to be super easy. Barely an inconvenience. Oh really? Yeah, it turns out this was all part of her plan, and when they try to assimilate her, they get infected with an anti-Borg virus that starts killing all the Borg. This is going to destroy the transwarp hub and kill the Borg Queen. So is this going to wipe out all of the Borg for good? Well, we're never going to say that in the episode. In fact, the characters are going to say they're striking a blow against the Borg, which implies that the Borg will still be around. But years from now, I'll tell people in interviews that the Borg was destroyed here. And eventually they'll make a show about Picard where they'll listen to what I said in those interviews and say that the Borg was destroyed here, despite the fact that this episode never states that and in fact implies otherwise. And despite the fact that the Borg will appear alive and well in a cartoon show called Prodigy, which will take place after this episode. Ooh, saying things in interviews that actually didn't happen in order to make it canon is tight. Anyway, Voyager is going to try to go through the portal that takes them back to Earth before the hub is destroyed. But a Borg ship is going to follow them, and Harry is going to say that they don't have the speed to get home. So back in the Alpha Quadrant, the Borg sphere is going to appear in front of Earth and a fleet of ships moves to intercept them. But then Voyager is going to destroy the Borg ship from within and come flying out. It turns out that they snuck inside the Borg ship in order to use them to get home. So then Janeway's going to say, set a course for home. And Harry Kim is going to cry, and then that's it, we're done. Wait, what do you mean we're done? What about Voyager returning to Earth? No, that's it, all done. But we've been building up to Voyager returning home for 7 years. There needs to be a huge reward to pay that off. We need to see how the Voyager crew is celebrated and how they reunite with their families and how the Maquis crew members are going to be received and how 7 of 9 is going to be received. You can't just end it there. Well, you see, sir, that's why I had the scenes at the start of the episode in the future that shows what it was like after Voyager got home. Yeah, but that was some alternate timeline that won't come to pass because Admiral Janeway changed it. So who cares about that? Plus, it didn't show how the Voyager crew was received when they first got home. Seems like we're robbing fans of the payoff they've been waiting for 7 years. But like I said, sir, I don't care what the fans think, and I don't care about this show either. I just want to get this show over with so we can do Enterprise, which I'm sure will be a much more beloved show. So, what did you think of the episode? Well, I think it's just a hodgepodge collection of things you think fans like time travel, the Borg, Klingons, future timelines, Barclay, without any cohesive story or through line. And you try to copy off of all good things without understanding what made that episode great. It wasn't that it ticked boxes like having time travel, the Borg, the Klingons, or fan favorite characters. It's because it had great character stories and had plot that was engaging and spoke to the message of Star Trek, that humanity can be better, while paying respect to the show that came before it and honoring it by having the episode represent everything that show stands for, and this episode does none of that. Yeah, but the thing is, time travel and the Borg are really popular because it will remind fans of First Contact, which means more people will watch it, which means more money for us. Yay, money! Besides, flash a few fan favorite things like time travel and the Borg, I think they'll like it just fine. Fingers crossed. So, the point I was really trying to get across with that pitch meeting that I've said a lot on my channel already, but is that series finale was basically just a formula. It's just like, comes off as CEOs in business suits sitting around being like, oh, what's popular? What's going to get people to watch it? Well, people like time travel. People like the Borg. People like TNG. People like the Klingons. So let's throw all this stuff in the script. Doesn't really matter if it's like creative or true to the show or honors the show that came for it or a good, epic, story on its own right. Let's just write this formula up. This is what we need, blah, 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 and this is what happens here, and who gives a fuck if we actually see the crew getting home, even though the whole show has been about what would happen when the crew would get home. So it's just, it comes off as a script by committee. That's what it comes off as. And so to hear Bryan Fuller refer to Kenneth Biller as a corporate stooge, that makes so much sense. That really adds up. It really explains things because we already know Rick Berman's a corporate stooge, and if he's also a corporate stooge and that Brannon Braga is a mini Rick Berman and they all worked on this finale, it is a freaking script by committee. And Brannon Braga is the most creative one out of those three, and he barely had any input in it. And that's true for, I would say, not all, but a lot of seasons 5, 6, and 7 of Voyager. Especially season 7 of Voyager. That it just felt like scripts by committee. There was creatives like Bryan Fuller and Michael Taylor who they would seep in, their creativeness would seep in every once in a while, and even Bryan Fuller, to his credit, did say that Kenneth Biller did come up with a couple of good ideas, or ran with a couple of good ideas in season 7, so it wasn't like, always a terrible showrunner, but I think overall he was. And, even though, I do like a lot of episodes in those 3 seasons, and there's a lot of some of the best episodes of Voyager are in those 3 seasons. Those 3 seasons, if you look at it as a whole overall, they're just bland. They're just subpar, because even if there was some creative writing and some great stories and good characters in those 3 seasons, overall, it was just played it too safe. Played it safe, refused to do any sort of serialization. It's funny because I read a quote from Kenneth Biller saying, since this is the final season, they let me do some more serialized story. Like, what serialized stories? There weren't, he mentioned, the thing with, 7 in each tab. Okay, that's fine, but they could have done a hell of a lot more than that. And they mentioned the Tom and B'Elanna thing. Yeah, that's like, who cares? They're a shitty couple anyway. Like, they didn't, or don't even go there with Chakotay and 709, Jesus Christ. Like, they didn't even build that up. Like, if you really wanted to do a relationship with 709 and Chakotay, you could. There's a way, like that I explained earlier, that you could have made it interesting by going back to the episode Scorpion and how Chakotay connected with Annika Hansen on a personal level, and like say we bring that up again, and I have an interesting story about them going back to this time and finding them connect, rather than this all of a sudden 709 makes a holographic character of Chakotay to fall in love with for no reason when they had no chemistry, and then off screen in between episodes all of a sudden they're a fucking item. That is bad storytelling. That is not using good characters. That is not using good continuity. And even though it's not, as I said, not all of these 3 seasons suck, even though there are some good episodes in there, it's just overall there's too much of this. Too much of bad plotting, bad character voices. You no longer have voices like Michael Piller, Jeri Taylor saying characters first. What is the episode about? What is commentary? What is it saying? What's it saying about the human condition? What's it saying about the characters? Those voices are no longer there. Instead, they're replaced with corporate stooges who look at graphs and be like, well, I think this is popular, blah, blah, blah. And this is what you end up with. Mediocre, bland seasons that are nowhere as good as seasons 1, 2, and 4 of this show. Anyway, that is it for my video on why Voyager's ending was lackluster. If you enjoyed this video, and you don't necessarily have to agree with it, but if you enjoyed it, you can check out my channel, because I am covering every single episode of Deep Space Nine and Voyager, one episode at a time, about to start season 3 of Voyager, oh boy, and season 5 of Deep Space Nine. I also have a video coming up this Saturday, which I referred to several times in this video, where I'll be making my commentary on the writing of season 3 of Voyager. So I'm actually kind of working a bit backwards. I did 5, 6, and 7 in this video, and then next I'm going back to season 3. But yeah, have a lot to say about the writing in season 3, so you can check me out for that. Check out my individual reviews for season 3 and Deep Space Nine reviews and all the other reviews I've done already. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.